Panic has officially set in across the city, and the national media is already writing the obituary for the offense before the first preseason snap even takes place. It is the absolute worst-case scenario that every single fan feared. Whispers are turning into screams, and the panic button has been slammed down so hard that the alarm is echoing through the entire facility. The narrative has completely exploded online, with talking heads claiming the unit is broken beyond repair, completely devoid of explosive playmakers, and stumbling blindly through a playbook that looks like ancient Greek to the players running it. The social media feeds are flooded with doomsday prophecies, declaring that the championship window is slamming shut and that the entire operation is facing an absolute disaster. But behind closed doors, away from the flashing cameras and the relentless social media mob, a quiet storm is brewing. What the outside world calls a complete collapse is actually the violent, messy birth of something terrifyingly powerful. Training camp is a crucible. It is a relentless, brutal testing ground where reputations are shredded and futures are forged in the scorching summer heat. For weeks, the atmosphere has been thick with anticipation. Every single eye locked onto a roster undergoing a high-stakes evolution. The pressure cooker reached a boiling point over the weekend when the practice fields played host to an offensive performance so sluggish, so disjointed, that the local press could barely contain their glee. Headlines screamed that the unit looked lost. Pundits dissected every incompletion like forensic investigators at a crime scene, eagerly feeding the public's worst anxieties. They pointed to stalled drives, misconnections, and a distinct lack of rhythm as definitive proof that the front office had miscalculated. The social media echo chamber amplified every single misstep, transforming a routine, early summer growing pain into an existential crisis for the franchise. Yet, anyone who has ever survived an NFL training camp knows a fundamental truth. August practice fields are laboratories, not operating rooms. Teams do not win Lombardi trophies in July. They build scar tissue. The offense was not broken. It was drowning in a fire hose of brand new information, installing a complex, sophisticated scheme under a completely revamped coaching architecture. A new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback coach, a fresh run game coordinator, and a wave of new faces meant that mistakes were not just expected, they were mandatory. Still, the noise outside was deafening. The panic had reached such a fever pitch that leadership had to step directly into the crosshairs to quell the mutiny before it consumed the locker room from the inside out. Standing before the microphones, the tone was absolute, calm, and unapologetically grounded. The reality of professional football is that progress is never a linear highway. It is a jagged, violent mountain climb. It goes up a little, drops back down, inches forward, and slips backward. Perfection is a myth sold to fans. Reality is a daily grind of incremental survival. The masterminds behind the playbook acknowledge the turbulence with a chilling level of perspective. Some days will look like an unstoppable juggernaut capable of rewriting the record books. Other days will look like a disjointed mess where nothing works. That is the price of admission when you are tearing down an old identity and building a modern, lethal machine from the studs up. Inside the building, the architects of a scheme refused to panic. The primary voice leading the offensive room had completely taken charge, running every meeting, calling every play, and commanding absolute respect from every player sitting in the auditorium. The command was total. His expertise bridged the gap between the whiteboard and the turf, ensuring that every receiver, lineman, and signal caller was speaking the exact same language. But talking about execution in a meeting room is entirely different from facing an elite, suffocating defense that has been playing together in the same system for years. And that was when the real test arrived. Monday morning arrived like a lightning strike. The weather forced the squad indoors, sealing the fate of a practice that would either validate the media's worst fears or shatter them into a million pieces. The response from the offense was not just a rebound. It was an absolute masterclass in resilience. From the very first snap of the opening series, the energy shifted. The signal caller stepped to the line with an icy, calculated focus, reading the defense with terrifying precision. With a flick of the wrist, he uncorked a deep shot down the sideline that cut through the secondary like a knife through glass, hitting the target in stride for a massive gain. Moments later, another surgical strike over the middle found the soft spot in the zone, moving the chains and sending a shockwave of energy through the offensive huddle. It was a statement. The off-day film study, the intense walk throughs, and the harsh corrections from the weekend had taken root. The information had been retained, processed, and executed at game speed. Yet, football is a game of violent momentum swings. You cannot completely silence an elite, hungry defense without drawing blood first. The defense is not there to make friends. Anchored by veterans who know every nuance of the scheme, they smell blood in the water every time the offense stumbles. Midway through practice, during a high-stakes team drill, the razor-thin margin for error vanished in a split second. A slight miscommunication on an out route, a fraction of a second late on the break, a millimeter off on the placement, was all the window a predatory cornerback needed. The defender read the quarterback's eyes, exploded out of his break, and intercepted the pass cleanly, taking it all the way back for a devastating pick-six. The defensive sideline erupted. The narrative was threatening to swing back. Was the first series just a fluke? Was the panic justified after all? In years past, a mistake like that might have caused a spiral. A young team might have folded, pressing too hard and watching the entire practice unravel into a disaster. But this team was different. The response to that interception would define the entire trajectory of their camp. What happened next left everyone on the sideline speechless. Total domination instead of shrinking, the offense responded with a display of sheer fury. On the very next meaningful drive, facing mounting pressure and a defense smelling blood, the quarterback dialed up a throw that will be talked about for weeks. With pass rushers collapsing the pocket, he uncorked a high-velocity, tight-window seam ball right between two closing layers of coverage. The rocket delivery zipped past outstretched fingertips and settled securely into the hands of the receiver for an explosive touchdown. It was the first true passing touchdown of camp, and it opened the floodgates. The dam had broken. Moments later, during high-stakes red zone drills, the offense struck again. A pinpoint laser into the tightest corner of the end zone found another target over blanket coverage, leaving the defender grasping at air. Then came the ultimate dagger, a design quarterback run where the offensive line parted the defensive front like the Red Sea, paving the way for an easy, uncontested rushing score. 3 total touchdowns in a single session. The offense had not just survived the storm. They had completely obliterated it. The media circus outside the gates was suddenly left scrambling for a new angle, because the team they had written off just 24 hours earlier had just delivered a masterpiece. While the spotlight naturally gravitational pulls toward the stars, the true story of any training camp is written in the margins by the roster hopefuls, the rookies drinking from the fire hose, and the veterans fighting for their professional lives. The wide receiver room has become a gladiator arena. Out of the chaos, a distinct tier of playmakers is aggressively separating themselves from the pack. The chemistry between the primary targets and the leadership core is tightening by the day. Route running has become crisper, hands have grown more reliable, and the sheer versatility of the group is starting to overwhelm opposing defensive backs who pride themselves on being the best secondary in the league. But for every player ascending, another is fighting a brutal uphill battle. Rookies stepping into this high-intensity ecosystem face an almost impossible learning curve. The playbook is massive, the speed is blinding, and the physical toll is staggering. When a young prospect misses time or struggles to string together explosive plays, the external noise grows deafening. Yet, inside the walls, the patience remains absolute. The coaching staff knows that development is a slow burn, and trusting the process means enduring the growing pains of raw, unrefined talent. Even the tight end room is feeling the heat. High expectations cast a massive shadow over rookie selections who are expected to contribute immediately. When the stat sheet remains quiet day after day, and the practice reports note struggles against elite edge rushers. The pressure mounts exponentially. The veterans hold the fortress, but the clock is ticking for the next generation to make their presence felt before the regular season arrives. While the offense stole the headlines with their explosive bounce back, the defensive trenches remained an absolute house of horrors for anyone daring to step in their way. The pass rush is relentless. With a notable veteran presence currently absent from the roster and a high-profile roster spot sitting wide open, every single edge rusher and interior lineman is playing like their career depends on it. Unsung players are carving out massive impressions, living in the offensive backfield, blowing up run schemes in the red zone, and registering disruptive plays that make coordinators smile from ear to ear. The physical transformation across the defensive line is impossible to ignore. Young edge defenders have packed on functional, explosive muscle, turning speed into devastating power. Their bend around the edge is sharper, their hand fighting is cleaner, and their understanding of professional-level details has reached a terrifying new plateau. They speak of consistency not as a goal, but as a religion. Every single rep is executed with painstaking attention to detail, build on the brutal monotony of what it actually takes to dominate at the highest level of football. And that open roster spot, it looms over the entire facility like a ticking clock. When a team parts ways with a depth piece and injuries threaten to push key contributors toward the medical tent, the front office faces an inevitable crossroads. Speculation runs wild across the fan base. Whispers circulate about emergency calls to beloved franchise legends who still possess the grit, the leadership, and the clutch gene to step back onto the field. Whether a legendary reunion actually materializes or a hungry, unemployed veteran gets the call, one thing is certain. The front office is keeping their powder dry, waiting for the exact right moment to strike. As the sun sets on another grueling day of camp, the reality of the NFL sets in with brutal clarity. Today was a triumph for the offense, a day where the demons of the weekend were exorcised with precise throws, dominant red zone execution, and an unbreakable mental response. But tomorrow brings a new nightmare. The pads are coming on. The precursor of warm-ups is over. Full contact is back, and the trench warfare is about to reach a sickeningly physical pitch. Everything that was built today will be tested under the crushing weight of full pads, where speed meets mass and technique meets pure survival. The narrative will shift again. The defense will bite back. The offense will have to prove that Monday was not an anomaly, but the new standard.